Welcome to Reccast, a video podcast series about all things AI in recruitment, brought to you by Reccast.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Reccast, the podcast series where we explore the use of AI in recruitment, looking both at the opportunities, the ethical considerations, and potential pitfalls. I'm your host, Jussi Luhtasela, and with me I have my colleague and co-host Mikka Tuomola. Our podcast aims to provide valuable insights for HR leaders, business executives, and AI enthusiasts on the future of recruitment in the age of AI. And today we have a very special guest with us, Alona Necetailo. Hopefully I said that right.
Yes.
Who's a forerunner because she's already been researching the use of AI in recruitment and talent acquisition in her thesis. I'm assuming that there will be a lot of future research on the topic, but as the use cases mature. But today we have a really good opportunity to delve into the fresh research Alona has been doing around her master's thesis. So welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Welcome. We can start with the basics.
All right.
Please tell us about yourself, like your background and how did you end up, first of all, working in recruitment and also making the thesis of the topic.
Oh wow, well, this is quite a long story and I try to keep it short. I think I always had an interest in people. My first degree was actually in education, and then I moved to Finland and I was studying business, focusing on human resources and leadership. I also have over 10 years experience in customer service and been fascinated by tech for a long time. And eventually it happened so that I got a position at SSH Communication Security, which is a Finnish cyber security company focusing on defensive cybersecurity, and I was working as a talent acquisition specialist. I'm still working.
Mm-hmm.
And well, the interest, how I came to this topic, I would say that I've been interested in AI for a long time already and been following the development of technology, but when I was working as a talent acquisition specialist, and I was the first person basically in the company who was doing that, I also needed to check for different tools that would not only improve the process that they had, but also actually build it. And of course, when the company works in the cybersecurity industry, there is a very big emphasis on security of data. And I was given a freedom to, pick the tools, but I needed to make sure that they are compliant with all needed regulations. And when I started to dig a little bit deeper into that subject, I realized that there's not so much actually information around. So there are certain regulations, certain articles, lots of fears and speculation. And I thought that, well, hey, first of all, I can do that myself, and coincidentally, I also needed to write a master thesis. So I just thought, this is a great opportunity to write my master thesis and also do some work as well.
Really interesting, and I kind of already answering what took you into the topic. Just before we get to the topic of your thesis and AI in recruitment, perhaps a bit of background. What kind of recruitments do you usually do in your day-to-day job? I would assume they're fairly technical roles you're hiring into.
Yes, exactly. So I do technical recruitment. I'm mainly hiring engineers and developers. Yes, this is my
and I would
focus.
imagine quite international.
Yes, exactly. Even though SSH is a Finnish-born company, we operate internationally. We also have offices in New York and Singapore, so I also need to hire people in the States and in the Asia region and also in other countries in Europe. So I'm responsible for all the hirings, and these are quite highly technical and very often niche positions.
But just out of curiosity, what kind of differences do you see in the talent market if you say you do hirings in the US, Europe, and Asia? Do you see some regional differences? I know Finland, we're perhaps in a downturn at the moment and there are not as many open positions, but what kind of trends do you see in the market in general?
Well, to be honest, in the past couple of years, the trend has changed a lot. And if we used to see that there are too many companies on one qualified candidate, Now, of course, the situation unfortunately changed, so there are a lot of people, a lot of talent, and maybe not so many positions. So, but of course, the market in general is quite dynamic and changing, and I would say that the trends are the same. It's just in the States, for instance, because it's such a huge country and there are much more people, you kind of see higher, obviously, numbers.
Yeah.
In Finland, it's pretty much the same trend that there are not always easy to find the perfect talent, but there are still quite many talented people.
Yeah. How niche are your recruitments? Are you really just looking for that specific technology, or is it more generic? They can do front-end coding. They are good candidate for us.
Yeah, well, it's not maybe too niche.
Okay.
Because, well, developers are developers.
Yeah.
So, of course, it is always great when there is an understanding of fundamentals of cybersecurity, because when you're working on software, you want to make sure that it is secure.
Yeah.
And for a cybersecurity company, it's crucial. You cannot. There is absolutely no room for an error. So, of course, you want to pick a person who has this, first of all, mentality. How we call it, like zero trust mentality. But who's also capable of producing, for instance, code that is really secure or of a high value.
Makes sense.
If you then dig a bit deeper to the thesis, which probably will be kind of a main topic today, I know that this might be a bit broad, but can you describe your thesis shortly, the main objectives and conclusions?
Yes. So the topic of my thesis is using AI-powered tool for improving talent acquisition processes. My main focus on the thesis was ethical and legal implications. If shortly, well, the idea of the thesis, the end result, was to create some sort of guidelines, quite simple for recruiters to follow when they need to employ a certain tool. Because, let's be honest, AI is not going to go anywhere. If anything, it's going to be more and more employed in all sorts of different processes, not only recruitment. But we need to have some sort of guidelines which maybe not, how would I put it, maybe not heavily, let me rephrase. When you read, for instance, regulations, it's incredibly difficult to understand what is actually happening.
Yeah.
So the aim of my guidelines was to kind of create a very simple guides to just guide the recruiter through how they can employ the tools without actually being too afraid of that they might not be compliant with some regulations. And some objectives of my thesis were to, first of all, understand what is the current landscape of talent acquisition and check what kind of tools, if any, AI-powered tools used in recruitment processes. Also, I was curious which parts of the recruitment processes can be, where these tools can be employed specifically. And then probably the biggest part of the thesis was to also understand how actually tech recruiters, how they're familiar with regulations, with the tools, do they use them? If they use them, do they use them ethically and legally? So these kind of things. So like briefly, pretty much that was my focus.
Oh, really? So many interesting topics to dig deeper into. But perhaps we start with that, where you said that you looked into the kind of the recruitment process, and at which stages are kind of AI tools being used today, or where it could be? What kind of could you talk a bit more about that? So what kind of, if you think of what's the situation today, perhaps, what kind of tools are already out there being used?
So if we think about recruitment life cycle, there are several stages, and of course, well, different people call them differently, but you can think about them. The preparation stages, when you just gather in the requirements of the role, and then we have sourcing, screening, interviewing, selecting candidates, and then part of the process, of course, also offering and onboarding. There are AI-powered tools that can aid on every stage of recruitment lifecycle. Of course, not the one single tool, but many different tools that you can employ. more often these tools are used on preparation stage and screening. Pretty much, I would say, all the hyped technologies, they are aiming to help you with the screening candidates, how to find the perfect candidates with an algorithm, you know. So also when I asked around technical recruiters, those who use the tools said that they mainly use them for the preparation.
Yeah.
And sometimes also matching some skills to the actual job ad.
So in preparation, you mean like collecting the needs of the organization, putting that together in the job description and writing a job ad.
Yeah, and specifically job ad, writing job ad, quite heavily used some tools, well, we know like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And the tools is quite excellent because you can also change the tone of voice, which is quite interesting. You can write just some basics of what you're looking for, and then just ask ChatGPT to write it in a certain tone of voice. Or you can even feed ChatGPT part of from your marketing materials and say like, take this tone of voice and write it to the job ad. So you can kind of have a cohesive employer branding part and cohesive job advertisement.
Do you use that yourself? Kind of teaching the tools to do a certain SSH tone of voice?
Yes, in a way.
Yeah.
It's not like that we have specifically like very unique tone of voice, but definitely we want to have same tone of voice throughout all our marketing communications. However, of course, here's the thing that because we're a B2B company, of course, a lot of marketing communication aimed to the other businesses. They have a little bit different tone than when you're actually talking to potential employees. Yeah.
Understand.
Do you see that the things have changed like very recently, maybe even after your thesis, because the AI hype has like probably landed? So the preparation stage was more like where the AI was used, but do you see that things have changed now so that the AI has been taken to a kind of deeper to the process, or?
Yes. Well, here's very important to also differentiate between Europe and, for instance, US. A lot of tools, they are developed in US and then, of course, advertises like the best tool and the best solution to hire your next best performer. In Europe, the situation is a little bit different. In Finland specifically, we're kind of behind the whole hype. So now I see that the hype that we could see in the US happening, now it comes here. Because at the time when I was writing my thesis, and it was autumn, just last autumn, so not so long time ago, people knew about AI, people heard about AI, they were fearing AI, but now there are all these different events, everything is just like, and of course marketing events that are talking about all those wonderful tools that will change work forever, which is a little bit funny because when I hear these presentations and I hear this marketing talk, I do not hear the most important questions asked there. So it also shows again that we, even though the regulations now picking up with the development of AI, our knowledge as of average people or professionals is still lagging behind it. So if you think about it, the AI technology is outpacing regulations, and we are behind the regulations, so we're definitely a little bit behind the technology, but the technology itself is quite far ahead.
Kind of nice segue into the regulation topic, I would say, and I know that you are quite familiar with the new EU legislation around use of AI in different use cases, and in this particular use case, recruitment. Could you talk a bit about that? What's your current understanding of the regulation at the moment?
Yes, so the regulations are quite complex, and even though they, first of all, they were just basically legislation went passed last week, so we are in a really good spot in terms of regulations within the EU, and of course it will still take time for it actually become law and
I
be
think we've
enforced.
done our guess GDPR.
Yes,
it took many years.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a good start, but I'm not holding my breath yet. And sorry, I completely forgot what was the question.
You were talking about the regulation.
Regulation. Yes. So Basically, the aim of the regulations is to ensure that AI is used transparently, and well, basically there are three main components of the whole regulations. They want to ensure that AI is ethical, AI is robust, and trustworthy AI. And then of course there is like pages and pages of text how you're supposed to ensure it, and they still need to be developed from my point of view, because there are a lot of things left unclarified in a way, which in the future when the legislation will be enforced would be quite a big problem. Now I can make an example. For instance, regulations put human oversight as the most important part of the regulation, but they do not actually specify how exactly it's supposed to be done, in a way that they say that a human must be in the process and must ensure that fundamental rights are protected. How? And who will be looking at it?
But that's how it probably will be on EU level. Then if you think, just again, the GDPR analogy, then you'll have the local data protection authorities. I'm not sure whether they are going to be the regulation authority here, but probably will, and they will give some guidelines. But in the end, if you think again about GDPR, the actual useful implication for us, for example, as a tech company, when we think about how we store personal data, comes from those those DPA guidelines, but also from the court cases. Because then when you get the court cases, then you start to see, okay, the boundary is here. How long can you store data, which is a conversation we're having today in Finland about how long can you store customer data. Is it 2, 5, 10 years of an inactive customer? And I would assume same goes here. So we're here today, regulation is just being passed. So we're kind of getting there. One thing you mentioned three things are important, and one thing you mentioned, which, to be honest, to me sounds a bit vague, needs more definition, is the ethical AI. Do you have an understanding what that means?
Well, ethical AI basically can be boiled down to that it should not go against human rights. So just like that.
No discrimination.
Exactly, yes. So if you just take any human right, then regulation says that whatever you do, it should not compromise those rights. And if I go back a little bit to the human oversight, my problem with it is that there is always human. The AI is not developed out of nowhere, right? There is always human, some sort of human, an engineer, a data analyst, a user. So by placing this huge responsibility on a human to intervene and to regulate, and not giving clear guidelines how to ensure all this, or even do you need to be a subject expert matter? Do you need to actually understand how AI works, or could you just be there and just check, okay, well, Sim's algorithm is okay? So that's where regulations are still behind, but I do believe that when we start using technology, as you just said about GDPR, when you start using technology, when you start seeing the cases, etc., the regulations will also catch up and be updated and hopefully be better.
And I think that it might work a bit to the AI's favor, kind of, that the GDPR has reached kind of a steady situation now that we know how to deal with the data, with the US companies especially. As you mentioned also, that most of the AI tools are developed in US, so it might be a bit faster than thinking of GDPR, which took like 6 years with all the data shield and Schrems 2 and everything. But still, we are definitely going to see the big players going to court regarding the AI, because that's how it most probably will be.
But there was also a situation when OpenAI CEO said at some point that they will take ChatGPT out of Europe if legislation is passed. But then there was of course public backlash, and it was like, okay, no, we're gonna stay.
That's exactly the same that the big platforms say about GDPR as well.
They're
still here.
It's the same thing. And when I hear or read the conversations about this AI Act, so many people just go like, oh yeah, well of course Europe now gonna be lagging behind in development of all these tools, whereas less regulated countries like US or China, they're gonna be much ahead in their innovation. So we'll be kind of losing money. But this is a marketing talk and kind of like a propaganda talk that we've heard already so many times about so many different technologies before, right? So,
And that's might still be the case, but then I think it's also a balancing act between, because again, using GDPR and privacy as a kind of a guideline. Now US is passed, a lot of US states are passing similar kind of legislation that GDPR is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of behind. So yes, US, China are leading in innovation, but they will also get the bigger hit of the negative sides of the things, if that's the path they take.
absolutely, and it's in a way more profitable for them to have less regulations.
Yeah.
If you think about how pretty much any technology they are done, and now also with AI. AI is not existing in nowhere. It
Yeah.
needs a lot of computing power, which rely on lithium batteries, right? So a lot of big players who have been earning billions in profit, they are using cheap labor in global south for that.
Yeah.
They have data laborers that earn less than $2 per hour of labeling some horrible content.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have children mining cobalt, right? So by abusing countries where there is no regulations, they're earning their money, right? And they don't want to have regulations because that will just put an end to the profit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when there is no regulation on how you can use personal data, they can collect so much data on whole countries,
Yeah.
and how then they're going to use that, right? So that's the question.
And another good example of that is kind of societies where, not only in my opinion, but in many people's opinion, too late to regulate. So, for example, say social media. And we kind of got all the negative sides of social media with, whether you have it like suicide rates of teenagers going up, or eating disorders, or whatever, all the negative things of seeing the polished picture of
Yeah.
somebody. And we all know the cases, and there's a lot of studies about it. One of the reasons why that happened is that society or governments are supposed to put guardrails on innovation. It's not the company's job. Their job is to make money within the legal framework.
Exactly.
And if the legal framework is not there, and I think we're going to see the same with AI now.
Yeah.
Good to see you moving a bit earlier. Let's see how it actually passes out.
Yeah, we will see definitely, but my fear is that when you collect the data, and a lot of companies AI companies been collecting way too many different data points, very private and very personal. When you collect that data, somebody has it, right? So in the future, why privacy is so important?
Yeah.
Because if the regime changes and some of the data points they collected on you now are considered, extremism, what you going to do? They
Exactly.
already have your data. And that's why it's definitely so important to be as fast as possible to safeguard
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. And that also gives people room. Okay, these are the boundaries where you can build your products, where you
Exactly.
can develop things. Well, boiling that down perhaps to a bit more practical level, because of course we can expect that people like us working in with building HR and recruitment solutions, we're supposed to read EU legislation and know it,
Yeah.
and kind of anticipate what's coming, but not every recruiter is. And I think in your thesis you had a really good, in the appendix you had a really good checklist
Yeah.
of things, what's doable, what can be done and what can be not done today.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how you came across this checklist? And for the listeners, I think we should link our thesis to the
God.
show notes here, if that's okay with you, because at least this checklist is super useful, if nothing else, but this is
Yeah.
very handy.
With the checklist, it's actually happened so that, again, as I work in a cybersecurity company with absolutely incredible minds, I was talking with one of my colleagues who is a developer
Yeah.
of AI. And he was actually laughing a little bit when I said that I'm writing a thesis on AI in recruitment, because
Yeah.
he was like, well, who would use AI in recruitment? This is ridiculous. Like, there is no proper data points.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, a lot of people actually already do. And when we started to discuss this a little bit more, he got so, in a way, passionate. He was like, but AI is math. It's just math.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that people don't understand it.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, like, maybe that's why there are so many fears and of regular people, because they actually do not understand what AI is. And then of course they listen to this marketing talk that just marketers who want to sell their product, they come in and say this will change the work forever and or the world forever. Of course anyone would be afraid. So I decided that in my guidelines I should start with simple things, what AI is and what AI isn't, right? And well, briefly, you should maybe think about AI. Maybe we need to break this concept a little bit on a smaller pieces. AI operates on algorithms, right? What is an algorithm? An algorithm is a simple if-else statement. It can be just like a cooking recipe.
Exactly.
Take these ingredients, mix them all together, output cake, right? Very simple.
Exactly.
If you put automation on it, then you can have lots of cakes produced every minute. Then the more complex that recipe is, the more complex outcomes would be, right? Then we have, this is like a part of how AI build. Then we have, of course, data science, decision making, right? So when you're maybe not following your gut feeling of something, but you actually have data and you base your decision on that. More complex algorithms like, I don't know, deep learning, all this stuff, they have so complex algorithms and so many different data points, these ingredients that you can make some incredible things, and then there will be the result. The problem there is that either too complex, you might get the result that you wanted, but you might not actually be sure what happened between you put those ingredients
And that
in.
goes back to the transparency and human oversight, which you just mentioned.
Exactly.
How are you supposed to be transparent or human oversight if you don't know what's happening in the box?
Yeah, there was actually, I'll digress a little bit because there was a very interesting example of how this kind of like machine learning works, right? Because it kind of needs to figure out itself. What do you do with these ingredients to reach that result? And there was this test with huskies and wolves. So they fed lots of different pictures of huskies and wolves for machine to learn and guess which one is which.
And categorize,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it was working perfectly. They thought like, wow, nice, it knows what it's doing. And then it comes so that there was a mistake in categorization. So scientists decided like, okay, let's look, how did it decide this to understand better? And actually, AI didn't really learn the difference. It noticed that with huskies on the pictures, there is mainly snow behind. And when it saw a picture of a wolf with the snow, it's like, well, it's a husky clearly because there is snow. And you know, this is the problem. So this is why actually the regulations want transparency, because if you make a decision on the livelihood of someone, and this is why, for instance, recruitment categorized as a high-risk area, because, well, if you employ a person or not, their livelihood depends on it.
Exactly.
So you need to be able to explain to them how the decision was made, right? And if you cannot, or what if there is a decision, but it was made just because, I don't know, there was some random word that somehow contributed to the pick, right? So. But that's a little bit digression into more complex things. But so we don't want that. We don't want tech that will be doing this, will be picking for us the best performance or like whatever. We want AI to aid us and to actually do what it's designed to do, to automate certain processes that we spend maybe way too much time doing. For instance, if you think about like the simplest algorithm that can be used in recruitment is in application form. You can have, do you have work authorization to work in Finland? You can't offer a job to someone who doesn't have
a binary.
Right? Exactly. Someone marks no, it can go automatically to the rejection folder. Those who answer yes, you continue screening them. It saves time, right? Then there can be a little bit more these kind of questions of like yes or no, and you can also employ AI to categorize some CVs in more or less level of like, okay, what is their skill level of this and that.
Yeah.
But you still need to then review them. But you maybe will need to review less, right? So it will save time. Then there are tools that could help you book meetings. God, it's like, to me, it's the best tool. Just to find the time that works for everybody and book the meeting, right?
Calendaring tool.
Exactly. I think this is one of the best implementations of AI. And things like that. The tool's supposed to help human, right? Not to take over it. Because I think our general problem of humanity is that we are forming emotional bonds with literally anything. You know, just to take a potato, draw some eyes, and that's your friend. And it's easy to kind of get attached. And now we have a system that can talk to us.
Yeah.
We think it talks to us, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we kind of start thinking that like, wow, it is intelligent.
It's a conversation. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then it's definitely smarter than me because it has access to all these data points and can process information much faster than I. But in reality, it's just math, really fast one. So we should definitely not place too much human qualities on the tool. But we should use the tool to assist us to have more time to actually, well, use our human nature to meet other people, right? As recruiters, for instance, that's what we do.
You go ahead.
Yeah, the AI is also helping, of course, candidates, or it makes their life easier as well.
Absolutely, yes.
But it also brings them some challenges for the recruiters and companies.
Yes.
Because we know what might happen if candidates start using AI.
Yeah.
Heavily in the applying. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, there are cases already. Back in summer 2022, FBI in a public announcement said that, kind of warned that some hackers or just like bad people use deepfake voice to apply for remote positions.
Yeah.
And they were in a public statement warning about that. And this is, well, if you just look on like really bad, what can happen, that's the problem. The deepfakes can be used to just pretend you're not someone you are, and then they apply for several remote positions, you know, and maybe then pay someone in, I don't know, India to do the same work for much cheaper.
Yeah.
So scamming, that's, I mean, AI helps a lot in scamming and in all possible cybersecurity threats as well.
And especially because you can do it en masse, like you said.
Exactly, yeah.
And then if you do these 1,000 deepfake applications, you might get 2 hits, and that's enough. Same
Exactly.
as with spam marketing.
Yeah. But when it comes to normal, honest people, of course they're going to use tools as well. Why not? If we're using tools to optimize our job ads for specific target candidates, of course they're also going to take them their CV and optimize the CV for specific job ad, which we always ask for, like that you need to tailor your CV and how long it takes time to do it. Now you can ask, I don't know, ChatGPT, please tailor
Here's my CV, tailor it to this position.
Exactly, and it also saves them time. It's extremely difficult to apply for a job. It's applying for jobs as a full-time job itself.
Exactly.
But then some people also use tools that in real time can answer interviewers' questions. Kind of put your phone there and it listens and then answers. And it's kind of funny to, well, at least that's what's been happening in the States mainly. It's kind of, it was interesting to look at the development, how recruiters start using heavily AI tools to screen candidates. Candidates start to heavily use tools to, I don't know, pass this like AI video interviews or psychometric tests. That's also possible. And then you end up in a situation when one AI interviews another AI. And it's just, I mean, not the world we want to live in.
Yeah, we are kind of in the same situation mentioned before in these recordings, that's AI talking to AI, basically. And then you might have AI doing something and another AI making sure that the first AI don't have a biases.
Yes.
So there is like so many places where there can be actually AI kind of controlling AI all the time.
Yeah.
So it's
But
Yeah.
that's actually one interesting topic that hadn't occurred to me earlier. But a lot of companies and recruiters and external agencies use these automated, or not automated, but these remote skills tests. Various kind of skills tests about your math ability, ability to produce text, or ability to process data, or think creatively. The validity of these tests when you do them remotely actually is a bit questionable nowadays, because you can always have your tablet in front of you and have ChatGPT running there producing you the text. And because many of them are time boxed.
Yeah.
But you can still be quite fast with ChatGPT.
Oh, absolutely.
You can produce a lot of text with that. So it's actually really hard to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're only answering a form.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you can also have AI giving you answers in a Teams interview or some other live interview all the
Yeah.
time. So
True.
there is
Like you mentioned.
Yeah.
yeah.
One going back to the list you have, you mentioned here that kind of a green and kind of okayish thing to do is automated screening and shortlisting
Yeah.
of candidates. And then on the other hand, like you discussed already, you had like a definite no-go, which is something we discussed with other people as well, is kind of the full autonomy in decision making. We don't want to have an AI to choose the candidate.
Yes.
Where do you draw the line? We had with the previous guest, we had a discussion about if you have, say, 100 candidates and you input the position and their application, let's put it that they have a written application and for example, a Reccast video with transcripts.
Yeah.
You input that into a system and tell them to rank these by order from 1 to 100 with the help of AI.
Yeah.
Is that already computer making decisions if you only look at the top 10?
Well, basically what means as a automated decision is that in no point there were human
Yeah.
that intervened, and it's actually against the law.
Yeah.
GDPR within Finland specific data protection, it's against the law. When you have shortlisting or well, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because you need to also input values.
Mhm.
How are we gonna be based on what? It's a little bit more difficult with things like certain skills, like
Yeah.
I don't know, we want a team player. How exactly are we gonna do that? But you can sort them on do they have I don't know, Python and Go language in the same application.
Yeah.
And if they don't, well, maybe they're going to another pile. But also, when you have different piles, a good ethical thing to do is also double check, take at least one from a pile of like 100 applicants that are like not good. Check couple.
Mhm.
If the algorithm works correctly, then there will be people who you said that should not be considered because they don't have right skills.
Mhm.
And the thing is, why do we want this? Because the reality is that a lot of people applying to the position they're not qualified to do.
Mhm.
And we just want to remove those people. We don't want to remove qualified candidates.
Yeah.
They're just like maybe not too qualified,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So just that.
You want to spend 80% of your time as a recruiter assessing the 20% of the top candidates. But how do you get the top candidates is a bit of a question.
But it's always a little bit of a question.
exactly.
I mean, the funny thing, if we as humans didn't figure out how to do it effectively and how to find those, best 20%, how do you think that AI will do it if we are the ones who build it?
Yeah.
Right? It's just kind of does things on scale.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of like perpetuates the biases as well, because we made it, right?
But you're saying that as long it's okay to have AI to help you to put people in, let's say, or rank them in order
Yeah.
against the criteria, as
Yeah.
long as you do a bit of double checking
Of course.
on that this is really working.
Yeah. For instance, how I would do it, I will only put people on kind of like this rejection folder
Mhm.
if they, for instance, do not have a work authorization.
Yeah.
That's a definitely no-go.
Easy binary.
Yes,
You don't
so-
need the AI for that. It's a tick box.
Exactly. It just kind of, but it will make my life a little bit
Yes.
easier if I don't need to look through every application and like, oh God, no, this person is like,
Yeah.
But then what AI might help me to sort like, okay, these can like extremely well match with what we wanted, kind of okay match, and maybe not so.
Yeah.
And I still gonna check, not maybe all of them, of course, all of in the like best match, but I still gonna check a little bit who are there in the not so good match, because I
Yeah.
want to understand if are there actually, did it overlook something? But the decision not gonna automatically, it's not gonna happen that it automatically rejects someone because AI analyzed CV and decided itself with whatever criteria that it's not good.
Yeah.
That cannot happen. Because also the thing is that you should be able to explain to a candidate why they were rejected.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this puts emphasis and burden also on the software provider side of things. They need to provide the transparency, or we need to, if we build something like that as a company, put transparency on the topics, and perhaps even, what would you say, would you have that kind of a double checking be forced by the tool, or leave that to the responsibility of the recruiter?
Well, first of all, vendor must verify.
Yeah.
Vendor must make tests, and this is something that is not actually done. A lot of this, startups that have this beautiful marketing talk that like 90% of this is like, there is no actual data.
No.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
And as a vendor, especially now, for instance, regulation says that you have to verify it. You have to test, and test.
Agree.
And then when it's ready, it's still responsibility of a recruiter to double check, and actually with the new regulation, it's also responsibility of the user of AI.
Yeah.
And if they fail to notify vendor, if I'm using your software and I notice like, actually like something is wrong here, and I fail to notify you, I will be responsible.
It's a bit like processor controller setup in the
Exactly.
GDPR world, where the actual end user, in this case the recruiter who's using the software, is in charge.
Yes.
But they can put some of the charge to their vendor, and should put some of the
Exactly,
responsibility
absolutely.
to their vendor.
If we think of recruiters there are of course many like maturity levels. Some are using already quite a lot of AI, some are just starting. And the quite typical starting point is to write the job ads with the ChatGPT or something like that. How would you advise those who are not that experienced with the AI, how to approach the whole thing?
Educate yourself on what AI is, and not through marketing talks, but actually just looking at a simple basis of the technology, how it actually works, and then ask questions when there are some, new tech coming to the market, trying to solve the problem. Ask hard questions. Is there verifiable data? Did they make an analysis? Who's this tech actually benefiting? It's not easy to employ AI, and it shouldn't be easy. If it's too easy, then something is wrong, right? So be critical. That's the most important. Learn about the technology itself, just the basic of, how statistics work and how its actual algorithm work, and what are the building blocks of AI. And be critical of vendors, because, but vendors always want to sell the product.
That's our job.
Exactly. But you need to verify that those are ethical vendors,
exactly.
right?
And there's, like you mentioned already, there's very big difference between the regulation environment and even the mental environment in US, Europe, and Asia. So especially if you're talking to a non-European vendor, I would put heavy emphasis on, as you do with GDPR, and as companies have learned, that, because big companies coming from outside Europe are not by default built into that regulatory environment.
Definitely,
Yeah.
And what I notice, at least in Europe and specifically in Finland, there is this mindset that the tech needs to be ethical, it needs to be legal. This kind of like adhering to the rules. And I think it's a good thing, because in the end it's, sometimes when I employ certain tools, I think, if I was a person applying, would I want the company to use this tool?
Yeah.
Would I feel comfortable or not?
Yeah.
Because all of us at some point might need to change a job and look for a job. And if we're looking for a job in a world that kind of decides for you, or algorithm that decides like whether you are actually good or not, it's not actually the world I would want to
Exactly.
be applying for a job.
Agree. And a lot of the stuff that say ChatGPT produces are, to be honest, boring averages.
Yeah, but this is a thing that, especially generative AI, is a very average person.
Exactly.
It doesn't do anything extraordinary.
Yes.
And I recently actually listened to this presentation of Sora, and magic tool. What? AI is not magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we call it magic? It just takes something like, I don't know, style of Salvador Dali, and then simulates it on your profile picture.
Yeah.
Is it creative? It's a simulation.
Exactly.
There is no magic in it,
exactly.
right?
Well, I would have a similar example of a copywriter who was talking about that exactly. Saying that if you as a copywriter, this person who's a very experienced marketing copywriter, she said that if you feel that AI improves your text, of course you can change tonality, you can do checking things and things like that. But if the actual content of your text gets better, then you're not very good copywriter because, like I said, your average it produces really consistent averages.
Yes, and very fast.
Not extraordinary good stuff, and nowadays not even that bad stuff, but it's averages.
Yeah, and I agree. Yes, I had this conversation with some of my friends that I do use ChatGPT if I need to draft some email. I'm not gonna copy paste it. It might give me an idea, maybe how better to formulate something.
Yeah.
But if you read the output of ChatGPT and you go like, oh yes, this is really good, then you are yourself not very good.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
I tried to write a fictional novel last summer with ChatGPT, but just out of curiosity to test it. But that was so boring that I wouldn't even read it myself. It was all the cliches that you get around the topic.
Yeah.
I think the last question, if we think of a 5 years time, keeping in mind that the development of AI, what do you think that will happen to recruiters' job? Do we need people?
Well, of course. I mean, of course there are places, countries that we try to eliminate human just because it brings more money.
Mm-hmm.
In the light of regulations being passed, I'm quite positive that the job of recruiter will maybe get a little bit easier. We need to remember that in the end, we hire people to work with other people. So without a human element, everything, like company culture or whatever, it will just fall apart. We need human, we need empathy, we need these only human things that computer cannot replicate. And when you meet someone, when you meet your candidate and you talk to them, this is the most important. And I do hope that in several years, as recruiters with these really useful tools, we'll just have more time to actually connect on a human level with our candidates and hopefully build human-centered recruitment. That's my huge hope.
This has been really fascinating, and actually, Mika, if you allow, I'll do one extra bonus question at the end.
Nice.
So, Alana, what would you say if a recruiter listens to this and is really keen on using AI tools, but also wants to be ethical and considering taking into account all the EU regulation that's coming and these kind of aspects? What would be good sources for information? Apart, of course, your thesis and especially the checklist that you put together, but where should they go for information? Because we don't have that kind of wealth of knowledge that we have for GDPR, for example, now. So what are good sources?
It's a very good question. I do know that there are some Facebook groups where Finnish recruiters gather to discuss these things. I do not remember the name, but I will share it with you a little bit later so you can link it.
The show notes,
Yes. And, well,
follow you on LinkedIn.
Follow me on LinkedIn, but I don't really post that much about regulations, but I think that it's worth reading regulations or putting them in ChatGPT and asking to summarize it.
And we'll probably continue exploring that topic in this podcast as well. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this. But thank you for now.
Yeah, I think we have covered a lot of interesting topics. Thank you for joining and bringing your knowledge about the topic. Very interesting discussion. Thank you, Jussi.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. And we hope you to subscribe in your podcast player to this Reccast, so you will be notified of the new episodes as well, and follow Rec in LinkedIn as well for the news and other stuff. Thank you.